Hello and welcome to the British Chamber of Commerce Singapore's podcast channel. With over 20,000 downloads since our launch, we're thrilled to present Season 5 of in-depth discussions on business, global affairs and news across Singapore, ASEAN and the United Kingdom. Thank you for your continued support and we hope you enjoy this episode.
Hello and welcome to the British Chamber. The podcast for the British Chamber of Commerce in Singapore is today held between myself, David Sharatt, the co-chair of the Financial and Fintech community, and the British Chamber of Commerce Singapore. Joining us today is our very special guest, Carmen Hett. Welcome. Carmen is the corporate treasurer of UNHCR, the United Nations Refugee Agency. Carmen has been with the UNHCR for nearly north of 2 decades now, and is responsible for managing the financial resources around the delivery of UNHCR humanitarian aid around the globe. She's also a champion of financial and economic inclusion, particularly of refugees, and drives the use of emerging technologies in order to deliver humanitarian aid. Welcome, Carmen. Welcome to Singapore.
Thank you very much.
Can you tell the audience about the UNHCR and its work? Everybody knows the acronym, but behind the acronym, there is an enormous amount of work, good work that is done. It would be great to hear from you.
Yeah. So UNHCR provides protection for people that are forcibly displaced, refugees, and asylum seekers, stateless people as well. So, just to give you a bit of numbers, so we have now 120 million people on the move that are forcibly displaced, and UNHCR potentially would want to take care of these people, 120 million, so that's not a small undertaking. So that's a couple of countries together in Europe or elsewhere. So our problems have really increased, and the sheer volume of people that we take care. And as well, our budgets are ever increasing. So in my tenure, we have doubled, tripled our budgets. So currently, if you look on our site, we have something like a 10 billion budget per year, and we are never fully funded. So my plea goes to the listeners as well. So we are forever looking for funding, and especially also for our emergencies, and to have preparedness that we can, be ready to deliver and not have to reallocate in budgetary terms our funding to meet immediate needs and then fundraise in order to meet those needs. So for us, it's quite a complex environment and we need to stay agile. So whilst being in that job for some years, it means that I have never a dull moment. Every day is a little bit different. And our needs are forever increasing. So we need to also have solutions. So we are in the business of providing solutions to the most vulnerable in this world.
And as a corporate treasurer, you said it yourself, it's a complex environment. And I would imagine as well, it's a much more difficult process as a corporate treasurer equivalent to plan for those emergencies as they pop up, because they typically pop up by surprise.
Exactly.
How do you navigate as a treasurer that type of environment?
Yeah, so I think we need all our toolkit that is available to us. So we work with partners in 130 countries, banking partners, non-banks, mobile providers. We need to make sure that we have an infrastructure available to us for treasury management, core treasury management. So it's a lot of liquidity management and currency. So we have overall something like 3 billion foreign exchange transactions a year, just to give a bit of an idea on volumes. And we manage 6 billion of cash flows coming in and 6 billion going out. So we need systems, processes, and obviously we need also staff to make sure that we actually can meet these requirements. And like you said, it's instant. So we don't have time to look at how we do things in an emergency. We need to be ready to have the infrastructure ready. And in particular, myself, I'm very passionate that we have our financial gateway with the payment rails. Everything is really ready to go, provided we have the funding. So that's what I'm about, yes.
And I think it's a lovely segue actually into, I would imagine, some of the technology, and actually jurisdictional challenges that as a treasury you face. As you said, many of those issues pop up. I would imagine many of those pop up in jurisdictions where actually it's quite difficult to move money around. On a technology perspective, I think also people would probably expect my side of the fence to be looking at things such as blockchain, but in your world, the UNHCR has been looking at blockchain and technological solutions. You've recently done a lot of work in Ukraine, for example.
Yeah.
It'd be very interesting to hear how you've implemented.
Yeah. So our driver is really to be able to reach people anytime, anywhere, on any device. So for that, we are looking at contextual technologies that really are relevant because we are serving the most vulnerable, and it has to be human-centric. So that's really the key. So we can talk technology a lot, but in the end of the day, it has to reach these people. The blockchain is a operating system, if I can talk like that. Yes, it's cryptography, and it's sometimes confused that it's only about Bitcoin, but it's about the value transfer that is really transported, I'm talking in English now, transported on the blockchain, and it actually gets into a wallet that belongs to the refugees or the internally displaced person. So that means it's like they're having their bank account on their phone, and that gives them really the dignity and the freedom to transact for their needs as they have them, as they see it. So there are a lot of reports provided that the most vulnerable are not going to use that money to buy alcohol. They really need to go and make sure that their kids go to the hospital, or they actually have food on the table, or have shelter. So it's really about basic needs to be able to accommodate in the first instance. So on that wallet, we then, as UNHCR, make sure that the integrations and the design options that we have selected are really appropriate for this population, and it is seamless and it's easy to use. So the user interface has to be really easy. If it's difficult, it will not work. So with the partners that we work on the ground, so it has to be also country specific. So we are not here running a system, that is not relevant for that particular circumstances. It also encompasses that we can provide digital literacy and digital education, financial education that comes with it, this solution. So it's not just about the payment, it's so much more that we can introduce our population that we care for, that they really have the tools going a step further in life, like all of us. We all have encountered that we need to press a button on a new link and introduce a new tool on our phones. And each time we do this, we actually learn how we can embrace technology. So it's also having that digital literacy for the people who are most in need, that we can also accompany them and provide so many more options and safeguard the value. So from a treasury perspective, every dollar that we get, I can talk in dollar terms, we need to make sure that the dollar actually, they receive the dollar in full value. So the integrity of that value transfer, of that donation that we receive donations. We are mostly funded, voluntary, from governments and from private sector. So the key is that we can ensure the traceability, the accountability, the reporting nearly instant. So it's a real-time system that we provide that really gives us these assurances that the money really goes where it's meant to go. So that's very important to us.
And I think there's a number of points in there we can go into in an enormous amount of detail, but I think for me the key takeaway there is exactly what you made the point at the very start with, which is the money goes to the people that need it in the most vulnerable position at the time.
Yeah.
And the technology is clearly the enabler, but the real rubber hitting the road is that the money gets to the right people. I think the other thing, and this is an often heard statistic that's been given to me, is if you give money to the matriarch in the household, roughly 80% of that goes directly back into the family. And so immediately you're putting money where the benefit is. And of course, the enablement of technology means the velocity at which you're making those benefits is clearly advantageous as well. Yeah, we've covered some of the benefits, but what were the, if any, unexpected benefits that you came across when utilizing this technology?
Well, I have been, for many years in that business. So in UNHCR, I've worked in private sector, public sector. So we all understand how long a payment can take. But if I were to say to you, if donors can give us money today, we can basically execute this transaction in about 2 minutes that it reaches the beneficiary. So this is quite powerful that they have the ownership there and then. They're not waiting for something to happen. So the speed is unprecedented. And the communication and the settlement of the transaction happens at the same time. So that's very important to us. So we can really give that empowerment to the most vulnerable to really be able, that they can go forward in their lives. So if any of us were to be a refugee, you will have to think about what you would like, that you actually can receive that aid there and then, and you can transact. So I think this is just so powerful that you don't have a whole population waiting. And even more so, you can include programmable features into it. That means we can also provide education programs, we can provide health programs, we can provide support to gender-based violence. So the key is that in the delivery, the programmable features are already built in and the transfer can happen. So it's not a disjointed process, it's all in one. And once it's set up, it really works standardized, seamless, and it really delivers. So I think it's very powerful to do that way.
I think it's wonderful what you just described, because in my language, that's what I would call a smart contract as an example, where you effectively have the if statement built into the scenario. It was also wonderful to hear about the different use cases as well, and the spectrum of opportunity, be it education, be it health, be it food, be it the basic existential necessities. Obviously, technology brings challenge. Were there any fundamental challenges that you came across in implementing this technology? And I would actually add on to that question that over the 20 years that you've been in this in this industry, that technology has changed beyond recognition.
Yeah, so I think that we ourselves as professionals need to stay agile. So we need to know that these kind of technologies exist. I think what has not changed is actually the baseline knowledge, how you need to structure a transaction. And also we want to work with partners, with banking partners as well. So this is not about taking out the partners, it's actually harnessing and leveraging the partner's knowledge, the partner's skills, and also the experience. So I would say that if we do this right, then it really is for everyone to do so much more, because we need to do so much more. We have so many more people, and we also want to create values for these people, by these people, so they can really empower themselves, so they are not waiting. So the ultimate goal is that they're not waiting going forward to receive aid. So they actually can take care of themselves. So it's a real new value creation. So to some extent, I think it's probably similar, like in the banking world, you also want to make sure that your products are relevant to your customers.
Correct.
So our customers are the refugees, and you were talking as well to compliance. So things on compliance have not gone away. So the UN is a convener, UNHCR is a convener of this infrastructure, and we need to link digital identity, registering the people that we care for, and there's such a thing like know your refugee, so not know your customer, but know your refugee. So we have many data points, and we do know who they are, And we run from a compliance perspective as well to look at, are they in compliance with regulatory rules? And they are. So we do a lot of pre-work already that we are not waiting for any financial service provider to do that. So we can actually work already pretty much on our side that we can give that comfort to any financial institution that we have done our homework on compliance as well.
And that's again vitally important. I think it's on my side. I think Standard Chartered, good example. Our motto is here for good, and we're here for good to ensure that all of the things that you just described are absolutely core to how we operate. I think the super interesting point that you raised there, talking about compliance, is that we now effectively have an ability to place reliance upon a trusted source when it comes to that distribution. And I think one of the other areas as well that's going to, and we'll probably come on to it later, but one of the areas that's super interesting in this space is the concept of embedded finance, about how, as you described, the service providers embed themselves within those ecosystems to effectively facilitate the transactions and the fluid movement. We also touched upon the concept of trust and not know your client, but know your customer, your refugee. Often the places that you'll be operating in and having to disperse payments to are in a state of terrible flux. Contactless disbursement of aid, that relies presumably on biometric information.
Yeah.
How do you get yourselves the comfort that during these times of heightened conflict, of heightened difficulty of proof, that you're able to disperse in a system that respects privacy, that is compliant with prevailing legislation, and that it actually gets to the right person at the end of the day?
Yeah. So obviously not working alone on these processes. So we have UNHCR and the UN agencies in the humanitarian space have their own registration systems. So these are complex systems themselves. Obviously, data protection is at the highest level. So we need to make sure that none of this data is compromised. So that data is in different systems. That's not on our payment systems. When we actually go into payment, we want to use as less data and information as possible. So whilst we ensure ourselves or have the assurances how the registration processes are conducted, who is eligible for aid, and then how we actually calculate, so the socioeconomic factors that we calculate as well for each and every country, how much we actually are providing as aid assistance. So all of this will come together then when we then create a pay file. So we will still create a pay file from our systems. So it's, to some extent, you can look at this like any other system, like running a payroll, but here we're running really aid assistance, authorized cash plans. And once we have that pay file generated, we then get it into the systems. Of course, there are communication protocols, there are formats, banking formats, all these things that we have already capabilities. But in the modern world, we are looking at the most direct way to reach these people. So it can be through a bank transfer direct to their bank account if they have one. We also need to make sure that the underserved and the underbanked also actually can reach the aid. And in a lot of instances, yes, we also transfer money to cards. That's also a possibility. Or we go direct to the mobile networks and we use the mobile networks. So there are various channels that we can reach. What's also important is that we make sure that in each context, we make sure that compliance with central bank, the regulators, everything obviously needs to be aligned. Often we also need to make very important decisions how we really deliver the aid. Is it in hard currency? Is it in local currency? Or, does it need to be tokenized? So that'd be the next frontier, how we actually tokenize and deliver a token that then can be utilized for different services.
And that's a brilliant segue actually into the next section, which really is blockchain has now become an understood, not necessarily embedded and widespread, but on the journey to becoming current technology. As you said, tokenization is one of the next items out there on the future pipeline. Where do you envisage the technology taking this 3 years, 5 years forward from now? A difficult question, I apologize.
Yeah, no, I think it's fascinating. So I think possibilities are there. So the idea would be that you have a wallet that has credentials for payments, but a wallet that has credentials for health, for education, and for work. And in some instances, you can also have a wallet that allows you to incentivize people to take courses, because education means that you actually have a chance to go about your livelihood. So education is obviously very important to make sure that if you want to create a business, you can do that. If you need to have more skills, you can do that as well. So I think that it's really to provide a platform, a wallet that has so many more functionalities that ultimately is a value transfer. It doesn't have just to be monetary, but is a value transfer that lets people to go about their lives.
I think this is a wonderful opportunity to perhaps take a little pause, and I can tell you some of the things that maybe we're doing, which could actually be of interest to you. And you talked about tokenization. I think one of the fundamentally interesting developments in the digital ecosystem has been the ability, as we said, for the financial services firms to embed themselves in that financial or non-financial ecosystem. You talked about education. One of the areas that I'm looking at the moment is working with partners to generate capital raise, in its widest sense, to place into funds that could potentially be utilized for social, charitable, humanitarian mechanisms. And the thing that's super exciting now is that 5 years ago we probably wouldn't have been able to do that, because now, as you said, the digital rails, the digital connectivity, the digital payment gateways, they all facilitate what is ostensibly very small payments to be made into something tangible that can be then almost distributed. So I think it's going to be an interesting 3 to 5 years, certainly. I would love to help you on the journey.
Yeah.
So stepping forward a little bit, what are some of the common myths that you often hear about refugees and aid? Why do these myths exist? And through your work at the UNHCR, how are you helping to dispel those?
Yeah. So we are everyday motivated. So refugees are people like you and me. So, and actually these days, anybody could become a refugee. So we could also become a climatic refugee. So I think that the context that we talk about, so refugees, we need to give them a value offering. So that really personally motivates me to basically to have half a chance in life to go forward. But it's not just in the country they're in. So, it's also to be agile, cross-border, and that solutions work in one context, but they can also work in other contexts, and to make things so much easier. So, it's obviously we see the coverage when we see refugees on the move, and you have to imagine yourself. You just have, if you're lucky, you have just your smartphone, and you have the clothes on that you're now on the move, and you need to actually restart your life from basically zero. So I think that to us, what's really important that we give them the toolkit that they have all the chances really to make it in life, and even more so. And there's some good stories. Albert Einstein was a refugee. So I think that we need to make sure that we don't leave no one behind. That's what we are saying. But it really is about that. So to ensure that we haven't missed out anything, and the technology will give us so much more power to empower people as well.
And it's obviously economic inclusion is a huge part of that. And I can't help but notice you have a lovely handbag on the table here. Would you perhaps like to tell us the story behind that?
Yeah. So UNHCR, we have an initiative. It's called Made 51. And these are basically refugees that produce these items. In this case here, it's a handbag that was produced by Afghan refugees in Peshawar, and that's the burqa here in blue. And it sort of encompasses, for women to be able to have that certain independence, that they can go about their lives and empower them. And we have these items actually for sale. So anyone who is looking for Christmas or any other event where you need some presents. So I think that these are really, really very tasteful produced items, not only always from women, but it's one of those examples where we try to build much more inclusion.
And that inclusion really comes back to what you said earlier about the sense of purpose and the sense of self. Many of the people watching this podcast living in Singapore, a lot of what we've discussed today is quite possibly as far removed from their current lives as you could possibly imagine. But they are tapped into the capital markets, they are tapped into economic flows. If there was one ask you had for the business owners and the business leaders in this community, what would it be?
Yeah. Well, refugees are not another hindrance. They have the power to be very productive. So it's to give them actually half a chance to engage in this life that some of us can benefit quite easily. But it's really to make sure that we take that responsibility as well to have this inclusion and empower. It's really the empower. And as we empower them, we empower ourselves. So it's not just the giving, it's also receiving. So it's a two-way road to make sure that we harness that knowledge. And myself, I've been on mission many times, and I'm always, incredibly taken in when I see refugees at work, whether that is in Africa, whether this is in the Middle East or in South America. It means that people really want to participate in that journey. So we cannot be prosperous, all of us, if we don't include these people as well.
It's interesting you mentioned Africa. People may or may not know, but I spent a few years down in Africa, and one of my favorite phrases that I still use to today is all ships rise on an incoming tide.
Mm-hmm.
And exactly to your point, and we talk about diversity and inclusion on a frequent basis. That diversity of thought and that diversity of skills that comes from a much wider community is clearly something that helps all ships rise on that incoming tide. It brings genuine value to your commercial enterprise. Over your 2 decades, and I apologize for keep going back to your 2 decades at the UNHCR, but that's a long time. And through that period, you must have seen some truly wonderful things and some truly not so wonderful things. What inspires you to get up every day and come to work? And really, could you share some of your experiences that have deeply impacted you on that journey?
Yeah, of course. I think for me, I'm motivated every day to get up because I know I can make a difference. I think what is really compelling when you actually go and meet these people. So when we go on mission as UNHCR, even though I'm working at headquarters in Geneva, I'm very connected to these people and their needs. And, during the time, I can remember during a time of Afghanistan, where I really made sure that all the aid could actually go into Afghanistan. And that really required my technical skills. But in turn, it really meant that people actually really survive. And of course, we have a whole team programmatically in Afghanistan that makes sure that people stay alive. So it's really like, it's not a nice to have, it's really a must have. So all these cases, and I could tell you many. I went on mission at one point to Lebanon, and I was in front of about 1,000 refugees, and it's quite moving to see people all ages in need on a street waiting for registration. It's hot. There is not bottled water, every 5 meters. So it's like it makes you think, and it's obviously it's that human aspect to all of us to be connected. And once you're connected, you can understand more the needs And if you can actually do something about that, then we must do something. So
I think for a lot of the people listening to this, a good day at the office is they make money. As you just said, a good day at the office is someone survives.
Exactly. Exactly.
As we know, the global geopolitical environment is becoming ever more volatile, ever more difficult to navigate. How do you navigate that environment, and what can our viewers and our members do to help you do what you do?
Yeah, I think this community can help us on various fronts. So on one front, it's about the technical know-how. So banking partners like Standard Chartered and others, they can actually give us access to their payment gateways that they already have established and still reinforcing. Ourselves, we have been pioneering on technology as well. So we understand what the options are, but basically our partners, but also any of you that can actually provide funding straight to us, because we can deliver these programs, specifically cash-based interventions, directly. So when we receive your money, we can immediately put it to work. We can also report on that money where it has gone to right away. So it's not something you need to wait for a year to figure that out. So we are really, I think we are, we have a platform that is agile, and I would really plead to everyone listening in here that whether you have technical knowledge, functional knowledge, but you also, if you have, if you're in a family office, you can also look at, fundraising for us, philanthropic aid that we can receive. So there are many ways how you can reach out to us.
Thank you so much, Carmen. This actually brings us to the end of the podcast. I would genuinely like to thank you for taking the time out of your incredibly busy schedule to share your insights and thoughts with us. It's been a very sobering conversation, but also a very enlightening one and an energizing one. Looking at the difference that humanitarian aid and how you've actually embraced the technology to get things delivered quickly to the people that need them. I think most of the people watching this can probably take lessons away from that. So once again, thank you so much for your time, Carmen.
Yeah, well, thank you very much for having us today here. So I appreciate that. And if you want to get direct in contact with me, that's also a possibility. So I'm open to that. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for tuning into this episode of the British Chamber of Commerce Singapore's podcast channel. Before you go, don't forget to subscribe and leave us a rating and review on Spotify, Apple, Google, and other podcast platforms. If you enjoyed this episode, please spread the word by sharing it across your network. For more information about the Chamber and what we do, visit our website at www.britcham.org.sg and tune in next time for a brand new episode.